Welcome back to Radical Thursdays. This week, we interviewed Taj from the nonprofit Empowered Swimming. We talked about the racial, economic, and time disparities found in swimming and all athletic sports. We discussed the stigma surrounding the term Black people can't swim, as well as the importance of nutrition and representation. Hope you enjoy, and we will see you next week.
So, can you tell us a little about yourself?
My name is Taj Omari. I'm 28, even though I look 12, and I'm the founder of Empowered Swimming Incorporated. We are a nonprofit organization, and basically we do work to eliminate the narrative Black people can't swim. We have a scholarship program where we provide tuition assistance for Learn to Swim programming. And we also provide products like swimsuits, swim caps, goggles, anything that you may need to assist you in your Learn to Swim journey, my nonprofit is able to handle. The other side of me, though, is I have a degree in psychology. And I'm currently in grad school, obtaining a master's in marriage and family and sex therapy. So I'm really just completely different, sides of the earth here, but both are my loves, swimming and psychology. And I combined it by starting an adapted swim program for the neurodiverse community, where I teach swim lessons to autistic persons or like anyone with mental, physical, I don't want to say disabilities. I have to be so careful with my words, but I teach all abilities how to swim. How about that? And I use my degree to that advantage. That's me. I don't know. My favorite color is purple. I really don't know what to say.
That's so cool that you, because when you said psychology, I'm not a psych major. I kind of really wish I was. I'm not gonna, but that was so cool. And I was gonna ask you how you found out if you were able to kind of combine the two. But that's really cool. I'm a early childhood and special ed major, so hearing that you're teaching swimming to children with disabilities is super cool. Oh my gosh, that's so fun.
We can collaborate on that right there.
For sure. So what inspired you to start Empowered Swimming?
Well, I was a little Black girl on a swim team back in the 99s and early 2000s. And we were in our own little bubble. Honestly, like we didn't realize there was a disparity in the aquatic community because, I had my friends. My swim team was all Black. We loved each other. I didn't even realize the systemic racism that existed in aquatic culture until we went to a swim meet that was like miles and miles away up in the affluent communities, and we go to a pool and it's water slides, and they have 3 different pools. They have a lap lane, they have a leisure lane, they got splash pads, they have all of these amenities. And we come from a facility that barely has working showers, things like that, barely has working water fountains, but we didn't notice it because we were happy just to be swimming. But then we go to this swim meet and we saw what other communities provide, and we saw how that other community treated us. And they treated us like we were the only Black swim team. They treated us terribly, to say the least. And that was the first time I noticed it. I grew up in the pool. I went from being on the swim team to being a lifeguard to being a supervisor, a lifeguard trainer, and so on and so forth. I never left the pool. But I grew sick and tired of having to drive miles and miles away from my community to the affluent communities. And I think y'all know what I mean when I say the affluent communities, to drive to their communities to teach their kids how to swim when my community's children are drowning. my community's children don't have access to professional swim lessons. My community's children have to swim at pools where they don't have working showers. And so myself and 3 other Black women who are also swim instructors, we got together and pretty much said enough is enough. We want to do what we can because we can. We are swim instructors, we're professionals, and we are Black. And so we shut down that narrative Black people can't swim just by existing. And so we made it our responsibility to push the narrative that Black people do swim. We have a community. It's just we aren't showcased. When you look at any advertisement about swimming, what do you see? White chiseled bodies. Swimming is it's an elitist sport, and it's very exclusive. But that is ridiculous because swimming is a life-saving sport. And so that's why we created Empowered Swimming Incorporated. We got frustrated. We grew frustrated. Just as professionals in the field, we wanted to be paid what we were worth, but our community couldn't afford to pay us. They couldn't afford to provide the services. And so we became like a funding hub for aquatics in Black communities. And that's why we are nonprofit as opposed to being for-profit and teaching swim lessons ourselves. We didn't want to recreate the wheel. There are a ton of swim schools. There are a ton of swim lesson programs. It's just that our community could not afford it. And so we are here to bridge that gap.
That's incredible. I mean, you touched on a big point there, right, when you said it's an elitist sport.
Uh-huh.
Unfortunately, it doesn't go noticed in a lot of affluent communities. We live in one where we're one of the only minorities at the 0.02%, respectively, for our respective minorities. But yeah, sports are incredibly elitist, and people don't talk about it. I play lacrosse. I used to play basketball. Everyone knows, like, lacrosse, despite the fact that it is a sport that originated in Native American culture, it became an elitist sport from white affluent people. And the reason why is because it's because of club sports, realistically, outside of school. You see it in dance, you see it in basketball, swimming. Club sports are what gets you to college. Yes. But club sports cost minimum at times $3,000 per season, not including expenses in like equipment and transportation and all those other things. It just gets you in the door. And so that's like probably the biggest barrier in terms of the eliteness that comes with it. And that's why you see a lot of people that are incredibly talented but don't make it because they don't have access to the extra amenity, what is considered an extra amenity. They only have access to what they have at the high school level or just in the general community, or that is affordable. It's just an affordability problem ultimately, which is sad because you see a lot of talented athletes get washed away.
You are spot on with that one. You are spot on.
Yeah, you see, I mean, I would go to tournaments and I would be one of the only people, I would be the only person on my team that would be a minority. And then other teams, I would see 1 or 2, maybe in the entire tournament, maybe an Asian person here or a Black person there. But it's a limited thing. And, you know, it's sad to see because you know that if everyone was in there, some people that was there because of the money wouldn't be the best.
Right.
They wouldn't. And a kind of side question that I have for you is, growing up, because of this problem, there wasn't a lot of people who looked like you at that elite level. Who did you look up to? Who was your mentor growing up?
I don't have one. That's a very interesting question. I didn't have one. You know, I would watch the Olympics in awe, but I never saw someone who looked like me, you know. And Simone Manuel, she came after I foolishly quit the swim team. I quit the swim team because I wanted to be a girl. Just put that out there. I wanted to have my hair I wanted a press and curl. I wanted to be cute, and like swimming made me like buff. It was just, I quit because I wanted to be a girl. And also because I had no one to look up to. I couldn't see a future. You know, I loved the pool. I loved to swim. And y'all, I was good. I was great, honestly. And I hit my ceiling. Like you said, I didn't have access to like progress to go like more professional swimming, just because those resources weren't made available to me, and my family had to prioritize paying for other things like my brother graduating from high school. You know, these things cost money. So all of those reasons led me to quit. And I wish I had someone to look up to. And that's part of the problem. I didn't have anybody, and no one else on the swim team that I was on had anybody. None of us are swimmers anymore. You know, I mean, like competitive swimmers. None of us are. And I think it's because we couldn't see a future. We didn't know a future was available to us because we didn't see us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you guys mentioned club sports, because I was thinking about club sports and just just like the separation that comes with being in a club sport. Like I played field hockey, and it's like either in our town, it's like we're a field hockey and soccer town. And so it's like either you're really, really good on field hockey or you're literally nothing at all. And when I was younger, I was good, but then I just kind of didn't like put as much effort into it. So I just dropped kind of. But it's interesting to see kind of how it perpetuates further into once if you have that money, then you go to college and then you're able to make something of yourself. And if you aren't able to start at that base level of starting in a club, then you just kind of are already behind. And so I feel like there's a very large racial shit or racial separation that comes with that. Because systematically there has been just racial separation between whites and people of color. Kind of seeing the separation that happens in athletics. How has the racial culture in recent times impacted what you guys do?
It made a huge impact. Made a huge impact. So we founded Empowered Swimming Inc. in 2018, like officially founded. We had been doing this work, building our company for a couple years prior, but officially incorporated in 2018. Unfortunately, that's before people cared about systemic racism. People would still say systemic racism is imaginary back in 2018, but then suddenly George Floyd is murdered and it's completely different. You know what I mean? I'll give you full transparency. What happened was in 2017, I would like to say, Speedo reached out to me via social media. And they were like, oh, we see that you are a swim enthusiast. You promote, water safety. We would like for you to, do your promotions in Speedo products. And we, do that kind of like an ambassadorship type thing. And so Speedo sent me a beautiful package, a beautiful package. And I'm a bit of an overzealous woman. It's like when I'm passionate about something, I go hard. I go hard. So I get a package from Speedo. I take this as an opportunity to like break down some barriers. I'm like, I have never seen a Black person in Speedo before. If you look on Speedo's Instagram page, you do not see Black people. You don't. Sidebar, the only Black person you'll see there is me, if my picture is still up there. But I'll get to that in a second. So I send them a full package, like a marketing package. I did a photo shoot, a video, I curated content, I created a narrative around it, describing what it's like being a Black swimmer. And I presented it to Speedo, as an opportunity for them to break down barriers as the #1 swim brand in the country, right? In the world, maybe. I was ignored. I was completely ignored. And I'm like, you guys reached out to me. So I was confused until George Floyd was murdered. And then guess who popped in my inbox? Speedo. And I felt a lot of type of ways about it. I was furious, honestly. I'm like, so somebody has to be murdered, and not only just somebody, because we've had a long list of murders prior to George Floyd, right? So this one murder, I guess because we're in a pandemic, everybody can't help but notice, all of a sudden you want to talk to me now. So I'm just, I had an attitude pretty much. And my dad had to pull me aside and be like, Taj, this is the opportunity though. Yes, it's frustrating. You have been shouting about these racial disparities for years and no one has listened, but now people are listening. So you have to utilize this time. And that mental shift was huge for me. It was huge for me. And so once I realized that, my entire company had to shift. I mean, it had to shift with COVID because all the pools closed. We were giving out free swim lessons. We were, training lifeguards. We were in the pool because we're coaches, right? We would just pay for it, but we also provided the service. We had to remove our service providing side and focus like 1000% on fundraising and paying for these things. And because we had the time, we all were working from home, we made our focus more on proper representation, like knocking down this barrier, like showing that swimming is not just an elitist sport. Like there are swimmers of every demographic. You can swim at any age. You can swim at any ability. You can swim. Human beings can swim. So there should not be disparities. We should be able to see everyone in a Speedo swimsuit, everyone. And so I started working with Speedo. And it was a very interesting process because I found out that, like you said earlier, the affluent community does not realize that other communities do not have access to these sports clubs. They don't even realize it. They just live their life like, oh, everybody
their parents
can
pay
swim,
for it,
or they should swim, right?
Yeah, their parents pay for it, so they don't even know that their lessons cost minimum $3,000, and if they have siblings also do it, it's even more, 6,000 times.
Yeah.
And that's just the baseline. They don't know. They don't realize the wealth that they have acquired.
No.
Because they aren't directly making it and spending that money. But if they were,
Yeah.
they would take it a hell of a lot more seriously, I'll tell you that.
Absolutely. But they don't. And so I've done a bunch of diversity and inclusion, like consultations and presentations about the disparities in aquatics. And I'm just a broken record. Talking about, how my swim team couldn't afford matching swimsuits, but we go and race these other teams and, they got swag. They are fully dripped down in the same fit, professional gear, all of that. I had to retell these stories and like absorb all of the what? Oh my God, that's what really happens? Oh, and that gets exhausting to have to retell my Black struggle story. That gets exhausting, but it's the job that I took on. It's the job that my fellow board members take on, because it can't be ignored now. And to my point earlier, what my father had to sit me down and like help me to realize is that society is listening now. Unfortunately, this man had to be murdered for them to listen, but they are listening now. And so when Speedo hit me back up, that was my affirmation, that now was the time. So I did work with Speedo. We're currently running this campaign with Nike Swim. So things are happening. People are listening, but it's an uphill battle for sure. And so we have a lot of work to do. We have a long road ahead of us, but change is, I don't want to say change is happening. I want to say people are becoming more aware. That's what I want to say. For this stage right now, people have to be made aware. And then once they're made aware, then these wheels of change can start turning. But we just gotta let them know what's actually going on out here in these streets.
You brought up a great point that I hadn't thought about when I was talking about the expenses that go into playing club, which would ultimately, you don't see people that don't play club. You never see them go to collegiate level if you don't play club.
Right.
You might see 1 or 2 people, but they work their tails off if they don't play club to get to the coaches and get them to go to the high school game. But you brought up a great point. Matching uniforms and gear. Totally forgot about it, but yeah, as a club and as you are required to, in order to play on the field and to go to those tournaments, you're required to own that sweatsuit.
To own that, yep.
Matching sweatsuit, you are required to have that. A lot of times you're required to have a matching bag, things like that, and socks and headbands. For lacrosse, but for swimming, I'm assuming you guys have to get matching bags as well. I've seen.
No, I mean it's the same, and I'm like, who can afford?
Exactly, and those are like, they're not like more or less expensive.
High quality,
like ridiculous amount of money for a backpack, like $100 plus for a backpack. I'm like, you're joking.
My swimsuit, the swimsuit that I teach swim lessons in today, is $78. That's just one suit.
Yeah.
Right? And if you are a swimmer, you need multiple suits.
And for different events too, right?
Yes, because different suits are made for different events. You have like training suits, you have competition suits. It's swim caps. You'll swim $25 on a swim cap that will rip if it doesn't fit over all of your hair. You'll spend $40 on a pair of goggles, and if you lose those goggles, leave your goggles at the pool. Just something small like that. You left your goggles on the side of the pool deck. That's $40 gone. It's so expensive. It's so expensive, and not everybody can afford. A lot of people can afford these things. And when we talk about this club membership, it just reminds me of, it's just another way to systemically separate us, right? Because like, okay, pools were integrated, but a white flight occurred, right? I actually have a friend whose father experienced this. That's how you know this wasn't long ago at all. My friend's dad told me this. He was like, when pools integrated, he lived in a Black neighborhood, and then the pool was, of course, in the white neighborhood, right? And there was a ditch in between the neighborhoods. So if the Black kids wanted to go swim, they had to cross that ditch to get to the pool. Now, white kids would gather in that ditch to beat up the Black kids so they would not go to the pool, and so they wouldn't want to swim. And this happened to somebody that I know. You know what I mean? This happened to my parents' generation. They hated the fact that pools were integrated. They poured bleach in the pool when it was colored swim time. It was just craziness. And so they eventually, built country clubs and membership clubs and, elite swim clubs that were, you had to be able to pay to be a part of this team. And that's how all of these sports became elitist. They separated the minority groups because they couldn't afford it, right? But we couldn't afford it because, like you said, we built it. And this demographic is benefiting because they have all of the financial capital to afford these nice swimsuits, this beautiful facility, these pools, and we're left with the broke down pools that were neglected after the white flight. It's all systemic. It's crazy.
You just remind me of another point too. See, there's lots of layers that comes into this whole systemic racism that you see in these elite sports. Another layer is everyone knows that time is money. If you have the money, you can afford to make the time. If you don't have that money, you can't afford to make the time. In club sports, the hours that you have to train with them, not only the hours in general weekly is a lot, but the hours that you do like during the day is so specific that a lot of people, if you don't have the money to make time out of your day to drive your child during a work day to a club, you don't have that time to do that. So there's several layers to blocking out minorities in elite sports.
Mm-hmm.
That's not just money. That's not just the keeping it a white sport, even though it may not have originated as a white sport, which is another issue in its own. There's time.
Yeah.
Time is huge.
You're absolutely right. That is huge. There's time. It's like family structures. If you have a 2-parent household, one parent can take the kid to swim lessons and the other parent can pick up, the other kids from school. But if you are a single parent with multiple children,
yeah.
How? When swim practice is at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and then again at 6 p.m., but you have other kids.
But you're trying to make dinner and wake up at the same time, but you have to go to bed late because you have to prepare everything for them. It adds up.
It adds up.
And as a woman, women tend to, there's no disputing the fact, do most household chores in a household if you're the parent in the situation. Obviously the child doesn't do it, or they do if you live in certain houses. But the woman have to do more hours of household chores than men traditionally, and you see it on average. So they have even less time of the day. And when you're in these positions where you're a single mother, which sadly ends up happening more than if you're a single, father, unfortunately, you really are working against time, which is hard. You're trying to provide these dreams for your kids because you want them to have a better life. That, anybody wants that. But it's hard. It wears on you. It wears on the kids when they have to get like carpools and when they're constantly like feeling like no one else understands. There's lots of layers to push people out of sports again. I keep saying that, but I'm fortunate enough where I'm in a position where I was able to have access to club, and my sister was too. But I see it with the other minorities that I compete against and I make friends with. I see it happen, there's no disputing. You can't say that it doesn't happen. That's what's tricky. People just still think it doesn't happen, but that's because they don't see it day in and day out.
They don't see it. I teach swim lessons still at a private pool. And that's to pay my bills, Taj Omari's bills, not Empowered Swimming. But I teach swim lessons at a private pool, and I contract lifeguard services to the Red Cross. And this past summer was so eye-opening for me because I certified a lifeguard class of 32 students, which is ridiculous. Exactly. Ridiculous, right? And I was the only Black person there, just there. And it was, the questions that I got were so interesting. It's just like, it was like the word is just like, oh, so you know how to swim. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm about to train you. Like, I'm your trainer. It's just, or like I'll walk into the pool deck with full uniform, supervisor uniform, walkie-talkie, whistle, keys. And it's, wait, do you work here? Yes, I work here. I have a name tag. It's those microaggressive questions that it told me that they had never seen someone like me before. And they don't know. They just don't know. It's really believed that Black people don't swim the same way like Black people don't snowboard or something like that. They just believe that.
That's crazy. But that brings us into a point that we've talked about a couple times. We talked about it yesterday when filming a podcast. Representation representation matters. We continuously talk about this. It matters if you're a woman. It matters if you are in a minority. It matters for age. It matters if you're neurodivergent, which classifies as ADHD. It classifies as autism. It classifies as a lot of things. And so it's important to see those people because it not only tells you and reaffirms, you know what, it's possible for me, but it also tells the other people in the room that it's not like one-off thing, you know? Right. There's people and it matters. It normalizes a conversation. It normalizes seeing everybody in one space together. So yeah, now, since unfortunately you said that you didn't have that representation on an elite level when you were younger, do you, obviously you talked about Simone earlier. That was a huge moment. I remember watching that. I cried too. I remember watching that on the screen because my dad and I was getting to the Olympics. Fortunately, it didn't happen this year, but when it does happen, it's really like, I hate to say it, I don't like to be nationalist, but it's one of those moments where you get really into your country despite the fact that your country has problems. That moment I cried, and she was crying in the lane, and then when she got the medal, and it was just a really emotional moment. And obviously more people came after her. As you're swimming and you're empowering these people, these kids and neurodivergent children and adults. I don't know if you do adults too, but do you see outside of just being empowered from you and your other team members, a sense of empowerment in seeing people like Simone and on the big screen? Do you see that big jump and affirmation kind of?
It's necessary. You know, psychologists have proven that a lack or I'll just say that a lack of proper representation suggests exclusion. And it directly correlates with the excluded demographic having low self-esteem, having, low confidence level, and it reduces the chance of diversity within that program. And so that exists in swimming. It's like it's hard to believe that Black people swim if you don't see it. How can we believe it? Never seen a Black person swimming at an elite level, so how can we believe it? And then if we look at all the advertisements, if we look at the Olympics, we look at advertisements for swimmers, if we even go to like a Dick's Sporting Goods in the swim section, you see nothing but white people. You see nothing but white people. It's like we need to know that we can hold space within this field, and we have to be able to see it to believe it. That's that proper representation. So seeing Simone crying in that lap lane, that was a moment. That was a huge moment. And I'm crying, and my mama was yelling across the room like, that could have been you. And I'm like, but Mom, how? We had everything working against us. Everything. And then I didn't even know. You know, when you ask little kids like what they want to be when they grow up or whatever, I never said a professional swimmer. I didn't know that we could be one. And if that was my mentality, imagine people who are afraid of the pool. Imagine people who are afraid of water, and what that does to the psyche. You don't see Black people succeeding, but you know that you can drown in this pool. And so all of a sudden, mothers are snatching their kids back from the pool, like, don't go near that water. Don't go near that water. I heard that my entire life. My grandmother knows that I can swim, and yet she still will yell, Taj, don't go near that water. When you take that, you take fear, and you add that to not seeing your community succeeding. It's even lifeguards. It's harder to find a Black lifeguard that works at a pool longer than, like one or two summers. It's so interesting. I'm one of the only Black lifeguard instructors that I have come in contact with in Atlanta, Georgia, which has a large African American population. And yet, I want to say I personally know 2 others. Personally know them. But I know it's not a lot of us because I get contracted to go all outside of the metro Atlanta area into other states to train. Just before COVID last year, I was contracted to go to California because there were no Black lifeguard instructors, and they wanted one because they had Black students. If we don't see it, we don't believe it. And if we don't believe it, how can we do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that addresses, I mean, we talk about it a lot on this podcast, but that just addresses like the generational trauma of just over time
We
hearing.
literally talk about this every single podcast. No cap.
I mean, it just keeps coming up. But
That's
it
awesome.
just shows that like if you don't see it, you truly like you just simply don't know, and it's just so unfortunate. And so you were mentioning that you also do lifeguard certification. So have you seen students who you have taken who don't know how to swim or very limited swimming ability and them eventually become lifeguards and go all the way through that process?
I have. And those
how I can't even imagine, like, how has that been to just witness that large progression?
Joyful. It's joyful. And I get that same sense of joy and pride when I take a kid who was terrified of the water, and you give me 2 months with them, and then suddenly they're swimming laps and jumping in the pool, and mommy, I never want to leave. That whole thing. That's why I do what I do. That feeling is why I do what I do. And if you talk to any other coach, any other swim instructor, they will share that same sentiment because we are teaching a life-saving skill. And so like, it's even heightened when I train lifeguards, because not only am I teaching you how to save yourself, I'm teaching you how to save other people. And if you pay attention to a lot of drowning stories that come in the news, it's often multiple drowning situations because somebody will drown and then a friend or family member will hop in to save them, and they won't know how to properly save somebody, and then they both drown. And so like when I train lifeguards who have heart, that heart, it's why I'm a coach. It's why I identify as coach. It's my everything. And it takes a lot. Lifeguarding is not easy. I know y'all see us just sitting in that chair, looking bored with our water and our whistle. Right. But if you ever saw a lifeguard training class, you would not disrespect.
It's hard. It's crazy.
It's crazy what we do. The fact that I'm a little woman, right? I'm tiny, and I have to swim to the bottom of 10, 12, 15 feet, pick up a 250-pound man, bring him to the surface, and then resuscitate him, right? I got to pull him out the water and then start giving him CPR. It's craziness, but it's possible, and it just takes training. So when I get a student with heart, I'm going to work with you. We're going to figure this out. If you want to figure this out, I'm going to help you get there. But, you know, I get a lot of punks in my class too, who, you know, at the prerequisite test, they realize that they can't hang, and, you know, they quit. At this point in my career, I've been doing this for 14 years. This point in my career, I don't have time. I am not a hand-holding coach. I am not well, maybe we could just, But if you are someone who tries, you put forth effort, I will put forth that effort, and we will succeed. You will become a certified lifeguard if you got heart. But if you a punk, I ain't got time. I don't. Lifeguards can't be punks because we're basic first responders. Basic, like if you're at a gym and let's say somebody collapses on the treadmill, they're going to go get a lifeguard, because the lifeguard will get to them first, and then the firefighters, and then the police will come. So we're the first on any scene at any rec center. So we ain't got time to play. You have to be able to go. If someone is drowning, you got less than 10 seconds to get to that victim and save them before they go under. We are lifesavers. At the end and beginning of the day, we are lifesavers. So you cannot be a punk.
Yeah, you can't half-ass that, because if you, excuse my language, but if you half-ass it, people's lives can be gone just like that.
And I've seen it happen.
There's really no time to be, well, this is just a side kind of job. I don't really care that much about it. You have to put forth the effort. It's like you don't want your doctor half-assing through med school and then treating you, because then you're like, excuse me, am I not worth that time and attention?
Exactly. And what's more unfortunate is that there's a national lifeguard shortage, and so pools
is it really
closing? Yes, unfortunately.
I didn't know
And it's because teenagers aren't excited about becoming lifeguards anymore. It's not, lifeguarding used to be glorified thanks to Baywatch. It was all sexy, right? We don't have that type of propaganda as much anymore. So high school students would rather go work, at H&M than to be lifeguard certified. And what we do to push back against that is lifeguards get paid the most at any rec facility. So we're just like, hey guys, you're in high school, come make $12 an hour to sit in a chair. But what's happening is facility managers who usually have business degrees and no experience in aquatics, they will hire inexperienced lifeguards because they have to fill that lifeguard chair. In order to have the pool open, to make money off the pool, you have to have a lifeguard in that chair, right? And you can go years without an incident happening, but the day that incident happens is when you realize you messed up by putting that inexperienced lifeguard in that chair. And it's unfortunate, but I've seen it happen. I've been there where I've had to rescue somebody where a lifeguard was sitting in the chair and I was just at the pool. And I performed the rescue because that lifeguard was not paying attention.
That's embarrassing.
And he got fired, clearly. I raised hell about that. Raised hell. Got fired. But that's what happens when you put somebody inexperienced in a lifeguard chair, because when something actually happens, you need that lifeguard to know what they're doing.
Can you get sued? Sorry, this is a side note, but I'm an exercise and sports science major. And so for one of our classes, we talked about essentially athletic training. Well, our professor was an athletic trainer, but in our field and in healthcare, you can get sued for negligence and stuff like that, or malpractice. Yep. Can lifeguards be, yes. Okay. I was just wondering, because I was like, it'd be crazy not to, thinking about it now, because that kid could have screwed over someone's life if,
I've seen it happen.
It's a little bit of self-assurance for me. It's crazy because when I was little growing up, I lived in Montgomery Village, Maryland, and at least in Gaithersburg, which is our, I guess, county, you could say, we had rec centers literally in every individual neighborhood. So every couple bits, we had a singular rec center and pool with it. And we were fortunate enough. And so that's a suburb of DC. And so it was incredibly diverse, but beside the point. Growing up, swimming, because I think probably because we had access to all these pools and community centers, was like a big thing. So if you weren't on a swim team, which fortunately enough, the Whetstone Whales wasn't as expensive as, more elite swim team, but lifeguarding was everyone wanted to be one growing up. It was a cool thing. All the teenagers in the lifeguard positions looked so cool. It was, so that's why I was just shocked that you said that there's a lifeguard shortage, because I remember growing up, it was the thing to want to be one. And it was just such a cool thing to see them with their little sunglasses and their matching work outfits and stuff, and their visor. I don't know. So that was crazy. But going back to something you said in the beginning there, about the transition from fear to never wanting to leave the pool, why do you think that fear exists in the child, or whoever it may be, and how does that process work to kind of dismantle that fear and turn it into instead of a love?
Exposure. So human beings, we're our first 9 months we're swimming in water, liquids,
Placenta.
placenta. We're swimming in all those juices, right? And so if you've ever seen a water birth, those are the most calm you'll ever see a mother and the child with childbirth. And that's because human beings are naturally equipped to swim, right?
Okay, because those scare me. Like water birth, like I love labor. Okay, this is gonna sound weird, but just like
To explain
like
yourself,
everything
people may not
surrounding
know
like
why.
pregnancy and just like labor and delivery and everything. But I feel like water birth, I mean, I get it that like we're in amniotic fluid when we're younger, but just something about like
Wow, that technical
you
term, Kenya.
That was good.
something about just like a child like coming out before they can even open their eyes, or before they like they're taking their first breath, but they're under. Oh wait, no, they take them out of the water.
So the baby comes out, and then the doctor slowly turns their head, and then the baby will instinctively start breathing.
Okay.
They're not breathing under.
Okay.
You know.
That makes sense.
It's instinct. That's literally what it is. Just like how little baby turtles, when they're born on the shore, they know that when they hatch, they have to run to the sea. That's the first thing that they do. Who told them to do that? They just know. So a baby, once they're out of the water, will start breathing. I say all that to say, infants are born knowing that they can survive in water. So parents are the ones who instill that fear. When you take your child to the pool for the first time, that baby is internalizing all of that energy. If you go into the pool deck scared and you're holding a child next to your heart, that child is going to feel that fear, and they're going to learn to fear the water. They're going to learn. And so the only way to combat that fear is exposure. To take a baby to the pool, to be in the water with the child, to teach the child that you can learn how to survive in this pool and have a good time and be safe. But that starts with, the temperament that's attached to swimming, right? If you are anxious, if you are afraid, then that is going to directly translate to your child. It's just how psychology works.
Do you think that fear from the parent is a generational thing from their parents experiencing, if they are old enough, experiencing that kind of trauma that you explained your friend's parents experienced?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's a lot of that. Generational trauma is a huge thing. It's a huge thing. So let's think about Black people for a second, right? We were stolen from our land. So like my people were Nigerian. I did that ancestry thing. And so I'm a direct descendant of slaves, the West African slave trade. And so my ancestors, were packed onto these ships, and many of them chose to jump overboard and die. And many of them stayed on board because they were more afraid of the water to jump over and die, right? And then you come to America, we're slaves, so we have and then when integration finally happens, we are tormented for attempting to participate in this activity. Tormented. We are beat. We are hosed down with water. We are, attacked by dogs by trying to go to the pool. We have to fight to go to the pool. And then the system was set in place to keep us out of the pool. So police officers would encourage these things. And so you take all of that, and then suddenly my grandmother is born, and she believes that Black kids can get sucked in the drain in every pool. Yeah, she believes that, wholeheartedly believes that. And then she gives birth to my mother. None of her kids know how to swim. My mom witnessed her cousin drown in a lake behind their apartment complex. So my mother is completely terrified of the water. To this day, she will not put her face underwater. But the difference, what she did with me, is my mother broke that generational fear of water because she said, one of my kids are going to swim. And so she, not knowing how to swim herself, being uncomfortable around water herself, she just dropped me off at the pool every day. Now, I don't recommend this method for everyone, but she would just drop me off. And so I was just there. I had no choice. I had nothing else to do. And I had no choice but to learn how to swim. She dropped my brothers off at the basketball court and she dropped me off at the pool.
That's powerful. That takes a lot of strength to break the chain and just want that. That's really hard for, I think, people to be able to break that chain, whatever the trauma may be.
Mm-hmm.
So, wow. This is aside, when you mentioned having the babies and just taking them to the pool, I remember seeing this video, I don't know if it was on Instagram or TikTok, of a swim instructor throwing the babies in the pool to teach them how to swim.
And the baby started swimming?
Yeah, what is that about?
Yeah, that went viral.
But that was like alarming me. I'm like, what the heck? But,
I know, right? You got to trust a swim instructor. Because a good instructor is not going to do that for a child who can't handle it. You know, everybody has a different temperament. Everybody has different fears. They process things differently. And so like, that's how I learned how to swim. I learned how to swim at 5. Like I said, my mom dropped me off at the pool all the time. One day she dropped my big brother off at the pool too. And he wanted to see the little sis swim. So he threw me in the pool. And I just started swimming, right? That does not work for every child. That method does not work, but for every child. But for some children like me, for that little baby, works. So if you ever come across a mother who's about to throw their baby in the pool, please don't let them. That's not what that video is trying to teach here. No, some people work well with rapid exposure. That's me. Just throw me in there. Put me in, coach. I'll figure it out. That's me. That's my personality. That's my temperament, right? I'm pretty sure that's that baby's temperament, right? But if you have someone who needs to, take their time, go at a slower pace, kind of get more comfortable, if you throw them in the pool, you are going to traumatize them and they'll never want to swim. So a good swim instructor knows how to read their client's temperament. They learn how their client learns. We have those 4 ways we learn: auditory, visual, kinesthetic. And it's been a long time since I've been in college, y'all. Those. So you have to figure that out. You have to figure out how to teach your client, because not everybody learns the same way. Yeah,
especially you said you also have ADHD, especially with us, we learn a bit differently than the general folk that's not neurodivergent. You brought a memory back for me when I did live in Montgomery Village. I was on the swim team for a bit until I stopped because I don't even know why I stopped, to be honest, but I was also pretty good, and then I just kind of stopped. But I remember it was picture day, and at that point I had never gone into like the deeper end. At this point I'm like, what, 4 foot? I'm like 8 or something. And I had my little sister with me, and we had our little paper that had all the things that we needed to payment for paying for those swim pictures with a magnet. I think I have the magnet on my fridge. I think it was like 2008 maybe. I don't know. Maybe I was a little less than 8, I guess, at that point. I had only been in like the 4 foot swimming and stuff like that, because that's the only time I had to swim in for meets. And Sophia, I'm calling her out right now, don't care about it, Mom, had thrown, like the troubled little youngest sister that she is, thrown the papers that, because she was holding hers, into the deep end in this like 6 foot water. What is the deep end to me at the time? It wasn't, because there's obviously the 10, 12 where the diving board is. And of course, you can't let the money sink. Money is money.
Money is money.
Never had been in that, was terrified. And I had to jump right in and learn how to swim in an environment that I couldn't touch the ground anymore should I freak out. And so I had to like doggy paddle over, get out. And so in my photo on my magnet, it's like my hair's all this awkward, like ramen-y wet hair because I had to adapt and learn like you did to a different situation. Gosh, I hadn't even thought about that memory in such a long time, but yeah, I guess now I can see how that swim instructor could just throw the baby in. But wow.
Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't.
Gosh, I feel like we gotten so sidetracked from our conversation.
I want to ask this question. It's kind of going back a little bit, but what are some stigmas related to Black people in swimming that, I mean,
Girl,
there's a lot. Like, can you name some, especially like the swim caps? Like, I had never thought of that. I mean, being a Black person and being a person who's able to swim, I should probably think about that, but I've never thought about it. But like, can you just like expand on some of those?
Sure. I'll do the swim cap thing specifically because there are a lot. Is a lot. But so if you have, okay, so African American hair, Black hair is thick and big. Our hair grows out, right? Whereas, white hair grows straight and fine. You can have extremely long, straight hair and fit it under a traditional swim cap. My hair is actually shorter than what it used to be with my locks. My locks used to hit my waist just about. I just recently cut them. So I just want to see if this swim cap can fit over my newly cut hair. But I don't know.
And just to quickly highlight while you're putting it on, like we were talking earlier with equipment, and how it's expensive, even though it's like a little fabric.
This little baby cap.
It's important for performance to have this quote unquote higher quality. So swim caps, though I haven't been in swim communities since probably 2008, but they help with performance. And when you think about physics, hate to bring that in, and how water works, and while you're swimming, and what is it?
Hydrodynamics,
I believe, right? You want to have the smoothest possible form, which is why also there's specific suits for specific events. The water that way
is a struggle,
and the water can part faster. And so swim caps are important to keep that uniformity as you're swimming, and so you can get that advantage. So when you talk about importance in having these inclusive swim caps that aren't available at a mass production in places like Speedo and the Michael Phelps brand and Nike, it's important. It can make or break a race.
Everything you just said is 1000% correct. So this is a traditional cap, and my hair ain't even that long. And y'all see this wouldn't work. This would not work. The minute I jump into the pool, this cap is gonna come off because it's already pulling. It's already sliding off my head as I'm talking right now. So it's just not. It just doesn't work very well for us because our hair does not lay flat. It doesn't. It takes a lot for our hair to lay flat. I'm sure, Kenya, when you would get in the pool, like you would have to like either braid it or have it tied down really tight to fit a swim cap over it. Now, I found this company back when my locks were longer. I might have to show y'all a picture of my longer locks. This company is based out of London. It's called Soul Cap. You see this swim cap? Look at the difference. Look at the size difference.
That's at least like 2 times the size.
Exactly. But this fit my hair and the cap stayed on. I would jump in the pool, it would stay on. And the most remarkable part is that my hair would remain, for the most part, dry. Like no swim cap is completely waterproof. right? It's just not the way water works. Water seeps wherever it can.
Right.
But having a cap that actually covers my head without pulling, it's healthier for my hair. It keeps my hair dry longer. I get less chlorine damage to my hair. And to your point, if I was on a swim team, I would win races in this cap. I have a quick story. I love stories. But my last swim meet that I ever competed in before I quit the swim team, with swim meets, you have, which events you're going to participate in prior to the meet, right? And so I completed all of my races. I thought I was done. Turns out that there was one more event left. It was boys ages 16 to 18 breaststroke, and they had only one participant. Now, I was 13. I'm not a boy. But my coach said, I got somebody to race him. And he came and got me. And I'm like, but I thought I was done. And when I was done, I would take off my swim cap and I would undo the braids that my mom would put my hair in, right? I was wearing one of these swim caps. So my coach comes and tells me I have to race again. And I'm like, okay, I can't tell my coach no, right? So I rushed, throw some fat little ugly braids in my head and put the swim cap on. But it was pulling at my edges, just like y'all saw. It was pulling. And I knew I was in the danger zone. I just knew it just wasn't going to work. But I stepped up on the starting block anyway. They blew the whistle. I dove into the pool, and you know what happened. My swim cap just flew. It was gone. And all of my braids came out because I put them in so janky. I didn't have locks back then. I wore my hair in an afro. So my hair was just massive. And that was the biggest struggle of my swim career. Not because I was racing this young man. It's because of my hair. It was so much drag. Like I was pushing, exhausted because of the drag. That added an extra 5 pounds onto my body. And I'm trying to beat this 16-year-old just so I could show him out, because he looked at me like, ooh, this little girl ain't gonna do nothing. Ha! I got second, but by like 2 milliseconds. It was like, And I promise you, if I had a swim cap that worked, if I had a swim cap that was made with black hair in mind, I would have beat him. Well, side note, I'm endorsed by this company, Soul Cap. So if you know anybody who wants a swim cap in a medium, large, or extra large, this one was an extra large, then, I have a promotional code. Y'all can get 20% off. This is my shameless plug. Don't mind me.
Take it.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'll definitely add that in the bio of the post for sure.
Oh, this was the question. Okay. I don't know the technicalities on a competition level, but if your swim cap comes off during the race, do you get points deducted or no? Because I'm not sure about that part.
I don't know. I didn't swim at a level high enough for that, but I would argue that yes, just because like there are a lot of little discriminatory things that will deduct points from like professional competition. Like in gymnastics, if your bra strap shows, or if if your underwear pops out, what I'm saying, or if your butt's falling out of your leotard too much or whatever, knowing, those little things, they definitely have an effect. But I personally didn't swim at a high enough level to experience that.
I know for high school you don't. I managed high school swim team, and I know for high school you don't. But also our swim team, we compete against like 3 schools that's in Connecticut because there's nothing. But yeah, I know for at least high school level you don't, and I don't think you do for club either because some of my friends did it. But I'm assuming as you get higher and higher, the stakes you're supposed to be.
I was just thinking, like, if it comes off and your competitor's obviously in the next lane, and if it like impacts them or yourself and it gets in the way, I was thinking maybe that might be a technicality point, so it affects you that way too. But yeah, I don't know about that one. But Yeah, it, like I said earlier, inclusion and representation matters. So this cap that you just mentioned, it's important. It makes or breaks people's careers ultimately, because sometimes those milliseconds can help you. That extra millisecond that you shaved off and gets you the race and win can get you a sponsor, which can help provide for yourself and your career as a professional, and it can help you make that decision. But again, it takes sponsorships to get to a professional level anywhere. You can't get there without the sponsorships, and that's another gate that you have to try to open forcefully. So yeah, everything, there's lots of small things that come into it. And I believe that brings us into food incorporation. Yeah.
Yep.
So on a general level for athletes, you burn a lot of calories. And even if you're not an athlete and you live an active lifestyle, you need a lot of calories to replace the calories that you're losing. And swimming is a sport that you actually lose a lot of calories while performing at the level you do to compete or even just to practice.
Yep.
You need that nourishment, and you need the correct nourishment. You can't substitute it for McDonald's, despite what
After every single swim meet when you go to McDonald's.
I was going to use a basketball reference, but that's good too. You can't replace that nourishment with it. I mean, if you chose to get a smoothie there, that might be able to cover some, but not enough, not nearly enough. So nourishment is important in enhancing your own performance. That's an internal performance enhancement, whereas these gear is external performance enhancement. So nourishment, vitamins. A lot of people don't realize minorities and people of color, we're more likely and susceptible to be deficient in a lot of vitamins. We're deficient in vitamin D a lot of times, depending on where you are near the equator. And even if you are near the equator, you're still deficient in it. I'm deficient in vitamin D. My dad is. I know lots of people are. Women, you tend to be deficient in iron. So these are barriers that you have to supplement on top of what you're eating. And vitamins cost a lot of money for not a lot of capsules. I'm just going to say how it is. It costs a lot. So that's another thing that helps you and helps provide energy for you. I talk about this a lot. I have a lot of nutrient deficiencies. When I was playing basketball, and lacrosse at the same time, my energy, I had none. I had barely any to get through the day, and both practices that I had right after each other, and school and homework, because I didn't have that nourishment. And so you need the nourishment on the supplement level, but you also need the nourishment in the general day-to-day, whether you use intermittent a snack or you just eat structured meals every day. You need that nourishment, and you need the proper amount of calories in that. And the calories need to come from proteins. They need to come from milk or dairy or whatever your choice is to get through there, through vegetables, through fruits. You need that. You can't deprive yourself of it. And another note is a lot of women in sports face a lot of mental health and body issues because you do get jacked up. Like you said, you get muscular, which is incredible that your body can get that, but society doesn't have that perspective, unfortunately. So you have body issues and eating disorders in a lot of athletes, which again impacts it. So you need that nutrition. And then when you talk about marginalized communities and their relationship to nutritious foods, we get into food deserts, and we talk about this a lot. Food deserts means you basically you have maybe one food mart or corner store with barely any nutritious foods, a lot of fast quick foods, chips, sodas. You have a lot more gas stations typically, a lot more liquor stores typically. You don't have the Whole Foods down the street that a lot of affluent communities tend to get, or the Trader Joe's, or a super Walmart. You just don't have that access. It might take a couple miles to get there. And so you talk about again, time barriers to get to those supermarkets, economic barriers to pay for that new food, which is expensive. There's lots of barriers that can impact and diminish a person's ability to perform at the level they're capable of and to succeed. And so, on a basic level, that's how our food incorporation looks like in terms of sports. And then on top of that, swimming specifically, at least in the wintertime, can be an indoor sport for a lot of people. Some people are fortunate enough where they live in good climates where it's an outdoor sport primarily.
All the time.
But that adds even more layers to the vitamin D that you're getting even less, or the vitamin C. And so people in indoor actually did a research project on this a couple years ago about supplementation and deficiencies in athletes tend to have, in general, deficiencies within these. And so you have an even higher likely to have these deficiencies as a person of color in an indoor sport. So we talked about a lot of different barriers today and a lot of different little things that may not affect you in your day-to-day life because you have access to it, but really make or break an athlete in the long run, like a lot. And people don't recognize that.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you have any food incorporations you can
hit everything that I was going to say.
Yeah.
Literally everything.
You also need this is a semi more focus. A lot of times to really perform, you need a workout or active food. So a lot of times it's a smoothie you see, or a protein bar. And you typically need, well, you should at the very minimum have a post-workout to immediately regain outside of your electrolytes, which may be a Gatorade, even though Gatorade's really sugary. So I would prefer if you go with a Pedialyte, no need to buy that new Pedialyte. That's like the sports one. Just get the big one. You need your post one, which can be as simple as chocolate milk. Chocolate milk has been shown to be a good enough post-workout supplementation to help you regain everything because it has all the nutrients in the milk. And, it's simple things like that you may have access to in a vending machine.
I'm glad you mentioned like eating disorders, and I am very vocal about my mental health, but eating is something that I haven't we talked very briefly on it with Joey quite a few podcasts back. But for me, I was a competitive dancer for 13 years, and my studio was extremely competitive. And while I enjoyed dance itself, I really grew to just hate the competitive aspect of it, and it pushed me away kind of. And so I stopped dancing. But right at the end, I had noticed how much of a toll it had taken on me and my body image. And just looking at a mirror, and I went to an art school half day and my studio. And so I didn't realize that until I had stopped dancing, which is crazy that it took me so many years to realize it. But looking in a mirror for like 40 hours a week really like messed with my mind. And like in ballet, you're always taught to like suck in and pull up.
Tuck under, pull back.
What'd you say?
Oh, I'm just adding and agreeing with you because we have more in common than we realize.
And so you're just taught to like critique yourself literally all the time. And that really
blackness by default.
I was just about to say, right. And so I danced while living in a primarily white affluent country. I also danced in a primarily white affluent community. And so competitive dance is extremely expensive, just like club sports. It's ridiculous. And so I'm competing against primarily all white people, and my body is simply different because of my genetics, and that just messed with my head even more. And I would do whatever I could to look skinnier and to lose weight. And eventually over time, it's so interesting how it plays a role from not just your food, and it messes with your energy. And so you can't perform to that high level, but you're always reaching for that level. But it also messes with your mentality and your academics. Like it plays a role in every single thing. And we come back to this all the time that food plays a role in every aspect of our lives, but it's really, really interesting as to how it truly, truly does. Okay, so we're gonna do the inspirational quote. It's by Michelle Ruiz. She is an entrepreneur out in California. And the quote is, "If people are doubting how far you can go, go so far that you can't hear them anymore." And I really like this one. And I liked that Michelle wrote the quote just because she's a female entrepreneur, which you don't see too many of. They're becoming more popular now, but it's still they're still so minimal compared to the male dominated business community. Um, but I just like this quote. It's just kind of like people will try to hold you back in various ways, no matter who you are. Um, and so the only way to kind of show them is to beat them. That's also like that quote kind of goes along with this one. Um, yeah, I don't know. It was really motivational, and I just like the aspect of not stopping at just proving them wrong, but to continue to go so far that their opinion doesn't even matter to you because you're succeeding so much.
That reminds me of this morning. I was scrolling on Pinterest, and one of the pins was like a quote about basically motivation, and how if you can't find the motivation to do something for yourself, just in general motivation, to do whatever you have to do in spite of someone. Pick someone, whether it be like a coach or a teacher or peer, that says, you know, you can't do it, or the world, depending on if you're an angsty teen or not. And do it in spite of them until you succeed so much that you no longer need to do it in spite of them. Out of you overperform, I guess,
Right.
is the term, but not to the point where it impacts, you know, everything else in your life. You want a nice equilibrium, but to get that motivation. So that's a good quote, Kenya, as per usual. You can find us at our website, which is www.nourishmysoul.org. You can look us up on Facebook. Just look up Nourish My Soul. And you can listen to us on YouTube and to our other podcasts as well on YouTube with Alicia. Just search up Nourish My Soul. You can find us on Instagram at nourish.my.soul, or you can find our teen group on Instagram at From Ground Up, which is spelled FRM Ground Up on Instagram. You can email Alicia, who is the head of the organization Nourish My Soul, at alicia@nourishmysoul.org. Alicia is spelled ALICIA. And you can listen to us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Breaker, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. If you listen to us on any of those platforms, just search up Radicle Thursdays.
Well, you can find me on Instagram mostly, and my Instagram is at Taj Y Omari. That's my name. My name is Taj Yasmin Omari, so it's just Taj Y Omari. I'm real basic, y'all. And but you can find everything about my company, my nonprofit, everyone who works with us, our sponsors, how to help support, all that good stuff at www.empoweredswimminginc.com. And all of our social handles are the same: Empowered Swimming Inc. on Facebook, Empowered Swimming Inc. on Instagram, and our email, empoweredswimminginc@gmail.com. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. This was a pleasure. And
It was.
I look forward to seeing, the work that you both continue to do. I think this is awesome, and I'm really happy to be a part of it.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you
We
so
will
much.
definitely stay in contact for sure.
Please,
Absolutely.
please, please, please.
Peace out, Girl
And
Scouts.
real quick, if you think of anyone that you know that you would like for us to interview, or if you yourself, just DM us at the From the Ground Up Instagram.
Yeah, you could be doing something, literally anything. It doesn't matter what scale it has to be on. Scale is a construct. If you feel like you're doing something big or small, and you kind of want to talk about your process and what got you into it and your motivation, who knows, it may help someone else. So definitely give us a little DM, slide into our DM. I encourage you to do so. Yeah, peace out, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, and non-binary Scouts. Have a lovely day.